want to speak to you this morning about stinking thinking. Let's see if we can get that. We have that graphic up there? Yeah, stinking thinking. This is a message that's been on my heart for several weeks, and I'm not sure exactly why. It's not because of a particular person or situation, but I just felt God drop it in my heart, and I've been waiting for the right time to speak it. And, you know, I don't know how many of you like blonde jokes or whatever. Well, hey, I can tell blonde jokes because Yo is one, and but I'm thankful that most of the time I'm not reasoning as a blonde. And listen, there's some brunettes that think like blondes too. Wow. Whew. So I just want to tell you, Ray and I have had some really close friends over the year that are blondes. And I sometimes wonder what in the world is going on with them. We have a friend of ours, her name was Kathy. Years ago, she worked for Teen Challenge with us up in Iowa. And Kathy was going to be flying the next morning home to Texas to visit some family. And so I was taking her to the airport. It's about a 30-minute drive into Des Moines Airport early the next morning. And so we're at lunch, and there's a few other ladies there, and they're eating. And I come over to Kathy, and I said, okay, so your flight leaves at 8:45 in the morning, right? And she goes, no, it's 8:45. And I literally went up to her, and you could see all the women just kind of stop and look like, and I went up to her, and I was like, what goes on inside of there? We had another friend of ours, and this gal was blonde. We had another friend of ours, her name was Sherry, and years ago, we lived in Reynosa, Mexico, which is right on the border, the other side of McAllen, Texas. And we lived there for a while, representing our church out of Texas, and we would have teams come down and stay in our house. And we would go out and do outreaches into the streets in Reynosa. We'd go into the prison and different things like that. And so our house was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Our kids at that time, I don't know, they were probably like 12 and 9 or 10. I don't know, they were just really, probably even younger than that. And so we had this 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and it was a house that was above a house. We were on the 2nd floor and renting that. And so upstairs we had our roof was like a really cool roof, and that's how a lot of Latin countries are made with their houses. So we couldn't afford a dryer because it was too expensive to dry the clothes, so we did have a washing machine, thankfully, and then I would dry the clothes up on our roof, and they would, like, jeans and towels would dry like in 15 minutes in Reynosa, Mexico. And so we would have these teams come from our church in Texas. Sometimes it'd be 20, 23 people on the team, and they'd sleep all over the house, and we had one bathroom, but it was so much fun. And they'd sleep all over the house, and they'd bring tents and sleep on the roof, and for like a week we'd all be there, and it would be a challenge for me to do that today, but back then it was fun, it was cool. And so I remember we did this drama called Battle for the Soul. It's a 13-people drama, and it's actually demons and angels, and they're fighting. They have swords, and there's the demon of drugs and alcohol and lust and money, and Jesus obviously is in it, thankfully, and Satan's in it, and this whole bit. So you got these 13 characters, and it's about 28 minutes long, and it's all choreographed, and I learned how to do that. I would train teams, and so we have this team. All these people are staying at our house, and we're getting ready to go somewhere and do the drama. And I mean, the demons have, you know, long black fingernails, and their hair is all spiked in colors, and I mean, it took a long time, the makeup and everything. It took about an hour and a half, 2 hours just to get ready for them to get ready and get all the makeup on. So we've got some of the gals are in one of the rooms, and this gal Sherry, she's getting ready. She's one of the angels, and she had, in that time, you had the big poof bangs, you know how they used to boom, come out, you know. I never did. I hardly have any hair, but, you know, the poof, you know. And so Sherry was a blonde as well, a long blonde, so you can, and so they're in the room, and they're getting ready. And so Sherry takes her bangs, and she's like this, and she has a curling iron in the other hand, because she's going to take this big curling iron, you know, it's like the size of an orange can, and try to get it like really big poofed. And so she's standing there. I wasn't in the room, I just heard about it. And she's standing there with her bangs in this hand, and she's got a curling iron in this hand, and then all of you are thinking, what does this have to do with stinking thinking and warfare in the mind? But trust me, okay, I'm just trying to warm up here. And so what she does, she's got both hands occupied, but she's not sure if the curling iron is hot yet. Yes. And another gal, Andrea, she's in the room, and she's getting ready. And all of a sudden, she can see Sherry going back and forth, and she goes like that. And you hear, psst. And Andrea is like, did you do what I think you just did? And Sherry's like, oh my gosh, my tongue, you know? And I'm like, who does that? Who? Okay, gals. Anybody? We had another, this is my last one. So we had another gal that worked for Teen Challenge in Chattanooga, her name was Jennifer. I could write a book on, she was a blonde too. I could write a book on Jennifer. She's still a good friend today. Amazing, amazing gal. I'd gone through the program, and she's just an incredible gal. And so we were, Yeah, she was on staff, and so Soraya's not in here, is she? Soraya was part of the story, and so we had Thanksgiving dinner, and the students could, family members could come, and moms and dads and stuff like this could come. So one of the guys, his mom got really sick. Something happened with her medication, and she got really, really sick. So Soraya and I had to take her to the emergency room. So we're in the emergency room about 5 hours with this woman, and we come back, and we didn't get to have dessert. And I love pecan pie with like Cool Whip on top of it. So we didn't get a chance to have dessert. So we come back, and we get everything settled. It's about 7 o'clock at night, Thanksgiving night, and we get back to the house, and Jennifer's like, you guys, Jennifer's the tea person, and like, let's always have fun. And she says, you guys, are you wanting some pie? And we're like, yeah, sure, we'll take some pie, And so we sit down, and she brings our pie, and then she brings the Cool Whip with a spoon in it. And I go to dish up the Cool Whip, and it's like runny. I'm like, Jennifer, what happened to the Cool Whip? She goes, well, it looked really thick, so I beat it. I'm like, and why did you do that, How many remember Roger, Helly, and Shirley were here almost 2 years ago, it'll be in November. One day, Roger just got in a brand new car. And he's standing at our Teen Challenge office there. There was an area with a kitchen, and there's a window there. And Roger is doing something at the sink there, and there's a window out to the parking lot, a driveway in a parking lot. And all of a sudden, he's standing there, and he sees the women's 15-passenger van, it's a white van, comes past the window, and there's nobody in it. And it's just going towards his car in the dumpster. And he's like, what is going on? Well, what happened is Jennifer, she was going somewhere, and she just had to run into the office for a second, but she forgot to put the van in park. And she jumps out of it, and here goes the van down the thing. Thankfully, it did not hit. I don't remember if somebody ran out and jumped in it and was able to stop it, but sometimes you wonder, what are people thinking? What? And seriously, I could tell you stories after stories after stories after stories. And ladies, there's some of you in here, you could add your story into the book. Maybe stuff that you've done. But, sometimes we're doing thinking that is just like, now, that is not spiritual warfare thinking. I think that's just like what, you switched your brain off. What did you do? And those blonde roots going down in there. And, but I think we have, I've been watching the news lately. I don't know how many of you have been watching the news, but you can only watch so much of it right now. Because it gets really discouraging. It can really get, I'm sorry, I need a Kleenex. And I don't see any up here. Thank you, sweetie. That's sweetie right there. Thank you, Jeff. You can watch the news, and you can think, my goodness, people are losing their minds. They're losing their minds. And if you hadn't had a chance to watch the news over the last week or 10 days, let me just update you on a couple of things that's going on. When somebody takes and holds up a head, not literally a head, thankfully, but a picture of a head of our president decapitated, it's like, what are you thinking? When you have a movie star like Johnny Depp the other day talk about assassinating our president, that's insane. And then Ray and I were last night getting ready for bed, and we had the news on, and there's some female vocalist, I don't know, they said her name, I don't know who she is, but she's some kind of singer. And I guess she's going to be performing in New York at Carnegie Hall or somewhere like that. And she's made a statement that if our president shows up, she's not going to sing. So what happens to the other hundreds of people that come and pay? It's like, what are you thinking about? And then you have some guy that shows up early in the morning at a baseball field while they're practicing for a benefit, the Republicans and the Democrats, and this guy stops not one person but two people and says, is that the Republicans over there? And then they find later on a list of Republicans in his pocket and goes over and attempts to assassinate people. What is going on? What are people thinking today? that their minds are just going crazy and insane, and there's something happening in our country, and the church better wake up. I talked about this last year. The church better wake up, because I've been in enough countries where the church fell asleep, and now they're overtaken with communism, they're overtaken with liberalism and socialism and all the other isms. And then the church is like they're going, what happened? It's like, well, you fell asleep. You allowed the enemy to come in and take over. And I see that in our country. And listen, 150 years ago, there was a civil war in our country. Civil wars within your own people, in your own country. There's another war that's on the brink of happening here. And it's not a civil war, but it's a holy war. And when they're coming in and telling us that we can't fly flags on our front porch, or in our schools, or in other places, or they're telling us you can't pray in school. Listen, July 1st, the Army, now, as of July 1st, men can go into the women's showers in the Army and they take showers together. Yes, as July 1st that happens. It came out this week. So, in other words, instead of us being focused on the enemy, the real enemy, ISIS or anything like that, a woman has to worry about a guy being in the shower with her in the military. This is crazy thinking. Absolutely insane thinking. And I'm telling you, the church better wake up to what's going on, because it's going to bite us. It's going to, there's stuff that's going on in Washington that is absolutely insane. And then when we were up there, Sonia and I, a few weeks ago, in one of the sessions I sat in, there was a question asked about to a legal, this guy was doing a legal workshop. He's an attorney, basically for defending the sanctity of the family and stuff, and human life, and etc. And one of the pastors in that session asked, so what happened with the separation of church and state? And he said, there are people working on that in Washington right now. And when the separation of church and state happened, it was to protect the church. But what's happened, it's been turned around to give power to the state over the church. And this thing is really, really getting messed up and really confused. And so there are things that are going on, and you only have to watch the news for 30 minutes and go, what? Listen, the other night we were watching a news station, and within 3 or 4 minutes, they had about 20 to 25 actual quotes that came up of the people. It was video thing of MBNC, is that what it's called? NSNBC? Yeah, that, and NBC and CNN. And within 20 or 25 quotes, they had a video of these quotes on these news stations of what they are saying about our commander-in-chief. I'm like, my gosh, this is insane. How can they say this stuff? And it's dishonor. It's disrespect. And so then why do we think our youth are going to honor us as parents? If this is what they're listening and they're seeing. It's just really crazy stuff. And do you know that it's been said by some of these news people that Scalia, that's his name, right, that got shot? Scalia. That he had it coming to him. That's been said. What is going on in our nation that is allowing people just to go like they had a frontal lobotomy or something? And they're not even thinking about what they're saying. Now, of course, the gal with the head, she came back, oh, I'm sorry. And Johnny Depp, I think he did this Thursday night, he was in the UK, and he says this about assassinating President Trump. It's just insane stuff. Now he's come back, I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah, after the damage has been done, you know, what happened to a nation of honor and respect? One nation under God. And people are coming in and they are trying to thwart the assignment of America and what God founded this nation on. And we really need to wake up to it. You know, we talk about ISIS and, you know, the threat of ISIS, and it used to be the Taliban, now it's ISIS, all this other stuff. But you know what? I don't think we even need them, because we're destroying ourselves from within. We really are. By this stuff that's going on. And seriously, if something doesn't happen, and we prayed during the election, but you know what? We can't stop praying. And in fact, I want to encourage our intercession teams, please make it a regular thing that we're praying for our commander-in-chief and his what's it called, not cabinet, but yeah, his staff, you know, that group that he's got, that we're continuously praying for him. You know, it's sad when an 11-year-old boy, Barron, looks at the TV and sees some woman hanging the head, the decapitated head of his dad, and goes running to his mom and saying, Mom, what happened? That should not be happening in our country. Not, at least Jeff agrees that this should not be happening in our country. And I'm like, God, this is crazy stuff that's going on. And the whole point is I'm not trying to push President Trump. That's not the point here. It's just that the honor and respect is leaving our country, not only for our commander-in-chief, but even for the church. There's no respect and honor for the church today. People when you got people walking to churches and just shooting people and all kind of crazy stuff going on. And so there's a breakdown of the family unit in our country. There's a breakdown of government in our country. And so what's happening is doors are flung wide open for the enemy just to come in. And he's like, well, I can take over here and I'll destroy you from within. And if we're not careful, that's what's going to happen. I'm concerned, too, that as Christians, that we've got thinking that's going on that really needs to stop. I love a lot of things Bill Johnson says, but one of the things I really like that he says, that I cannot afford to have a thought up here that's contrary that Jesus wouldn't have. I can't. And if every single one of us, and I give you this assignment this week, and probably one or two of you will do it, but anyway, I want to encourage you to do it. Take one day. I'm not talking about a week, and I'm not talking about a month. Take one day and write your thoughts down. And I can guarantee you, for most of us sitting in this room, this is going to be the negative pile, and this is going to be the encouraging pile. Because we got thoughts that run through our head all the time. That is not thoughts of Jesus. It is not God's thoughts. And our heart has been won. On the cross, 2,000. Oh yes, I'm a Christian. Jesus is on the throne of my heart. He lives right here. I am saved. I'm sanctified, and He's in control of my life. But most of us, we're playing musical chairs with our mind. And so you get down to that one chair, and there's a fight to see who's on it, me or God or Satan, the enemy, and they're all pushing, and that's what happens with our minds so many times. Jesus is not on the throne of our minds. And I tell you what, you don't want to see my thoughts, and I don't want to see your thoughts, okay? That just would be really scary. But I really think there's more that's going on up here, that we're giving a place to the enemy that he should not have. And so we know that Jesus, for the most of us, if you've been born again, if you surrender your life to Christ, you've been washed with the blood, you've received Him into your life, Jesus is on the throne of our heart. We know that. Jesus is on the throne of my heart. But in our minds, it's a whole other story. Who is on the throne of your mind? And there's a war that goes on between these two things right here, constantly, and the enemy is battling and battling and battling. And sometimes it's because we give Him place to do it. It's between attitudes we have. It's between unforgiveness. It's things that we're reading or watching or whatever that opens up to those things. Listen, please understand, I'm not rebuking you, but I cannot imagine in the world why people listen to country music. But anyway, some of you do, I'm sure. If I was to sit there and listen to country music about how my sweetie left me, and with a dog with mange, and my checkbook is empty, and this and this and this and this, my gosh, I'd be so depressed. Huh? I just won't preach it in Nashville. But seriously, you listen to that stuff, and all of a sudden, I can only watch so much news. Because if I watch too much news, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in trouble here. Oh my goodness, we're going down the drain. Yeah, where's the focus? There's a story that's in, that I really think, there's so many good stories. Sweetie, can you give me that water right there? I'm so sorry, guys. I'm trying to keep myself going here. There's a story that, to me, is a really cool story. But it's a sad story. And it's about Elisha and this woman. And so, if you have your Bibles, I want you to look at it. We're not going to read the whole story because it's too long, but I'm going to kind of bring out about 3 or 4 different scriptures in that. Anyway, there is this king of Israel. His name was Ahab. And he was not a good king. And I don't understand why people would allow people to be bad kings over the people of God. But anyway, Ahab was one of that line of kings, and he was not a really good king. And he marries this woman, and her name is Jezebel, and she's from the Sidonians, and they worship Baal. And so this king of Israel, instead of staying away from someone like that, he marries this woman. And she's not good at all. She is not a good thing at all. And so anyway, she begins to manipulate and do all this other stuff. Well, then Elijah, here comes Elijah, and we all know about Elijah. He's one of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament. And it's amazing because Elijah predicts a drought. You know, so there's a drought that comes on the land. Of course, there's judgment because of the wickedness that's going on under this king and da-da-da-da. It's about 3 or 4 chapters long. And so there's this drought that he predicts. Then he goes, and with the drought, he goes to this widow's house, and he's like, do you have anything to eat? She goes, no, I just have a little bit of oil, a little bit of flour. He goes, give it to me, and he and the boy and the mom, the widow, lives on this bread for like a long time. A miracle. There's all these miracles. And then the boy dies, and he raises the boy from the dead. How cool. I mean, this is like some major, how many have raised the dead lately? How many have taken a little bit of oil and a little bit of bread and made or flour and made bread that you live off of for weeks? No, none of us have done that. But here's Elijah. He's a tremendous prophet, tremendous man of God, and he's doing these awesome miracles. And then the final thing is that he does where he burns up the gods of Baal. 450 gods of Baal, man. Fire comes down, he calls down, you know, and these guys are, they're incinerated and all this other stuff. They take swords and they cut them all up, and I know it's really gross, but it's in the Bible. And they do all this stuff and everything, and I'm like, wow, cool. This is amazing man of God. Wow. And so many of us just admire Elijah, and he was an incredible man. But then all of a sudden, let me just read you a couple of scriptures out of 1 Kings 18. And Elijah comes, and he says he came near to all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? And so many of us are double-minded. We're like, oh, well, maybe, this, and then, okay, here, and we're listening to the pigeon, then we're listening to the dove, then we're listening to the pigeon, we listen to the dove, da-da-da-da-da, and it's like this ping-pong match going on, na-na-na-na-na. Now, how many, we know that, like baseball players, they wear helmets, right? When they get up to bat? Why? Jeff? Why when a batter gets up to bat, does he have a helmet on? They don't trust the pitcher. Okay, someone else give me the answer. To protect their head, right? Is that why they wear those? They don't do it because, you know, it's a fashion. They wear a helmet, and I think they have a thing on the ear right here, like a piece, depending on if you're left side or right sided, and it's to protect the head, to protect the brain. Because if that ball was to hit you in the head, it could be death. Why do football players wear helmets? To protect their head. Why do wrestlers wear helmets? But most Christians don't protect their brain. We're not protecting our head. In Ephesians 6, it talks about the armor of God, and one of them is the helmet of salvation. Our heart has been saved, but our minds are still not saved yet. And so most of us, we get up in the morning, and we got this nice helmet of salvation on our dresser, and we walk right past it, and we walk out the door and never think about it. And that helmet is there to protect our minds. And there's so many things we do in the natural that we do not do in the spiritual. And God is saying you need to do this. You need to protect your minds. Put on the helmet of salvation, Ephesians 6. Put on the helmet of salvation because there's a war and the enemy is out to kill, rob, steal, and destroy your life. And if our heart has been won 2,000 years ago, but our minds are still being battled for. And we really need to be careful what we're thinking about, and that's that stinking thinking. A lot of us have stinking thinking. Listen, when somebody comes to the office and they're going to have an appointment with me, I don't ever say, hey, can we go out and hang out and do our counseling at the garbage dump? Is that okay with you? They would look at me like I'm crazy and say, I'm canceling my appointment. But that's what we do so many times. We hang out at the dumpster where it's stinking and there's flies and it's just bzzz, and these flies are buzzing around in our heads and telling us all kind of stuff that's not God, and it's not his way. So Elijah says, when are you going to get, you got to stop hesitating between two opinions. So anyway, he destroys the gods of Baal, and man, it was incredible. The story is amazing. I can't wait to see this video when we get to heaven. And then in chapter 19, let's read this. Now Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and even more if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And it says, and he was afraid in verse 3. Here's this man. He's done these miracles. He's raised the dead. He's burned up 450 prophets of Baal. And here he is. He's afraid. Oh, my gosh, this woman. 450 prophets, and now he's running from a woman. And it says he ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. So here he is. He winds up in the desert, and then angels start feeding him and giving him water and fresh bread and stuff like that. He sleeps, wakes up, and then God sends him on assignment to destroy, basically. Anoint some kings, Jehu and this and that, and eventually he's going to destroy Jezebel. But here's this incredible guy, this incredible man of God, and he's running from a woman. I don't understand this at all except that word afraid. And what the enemy will do, there's several different D words that the enemy will use against us, and it is disappointment, discouragement, depression, distraction. And the enemy uses those things against us. And all of a sudden, he's got us caught. And most of the time, we're allowing him to do it. He only has authority to what you give him authority over. He cannot have authority over you. If you're bought by the blood of Jesus, he can't have authority unless you give him authority. And there's so many times that, we blame God for so much. I'm like, my gosh, poor dad in heaven. He gets blamed for stuff that's not him. Because we're listening to the wrong voices. We're not being wise in our thinking. And all of a sudden, he gets blamed for all kind of stuff. And listen, we live in a fallen world. I could sit here over the last 2 weeks, and I've been sick. And I've gone through the steroids, and I've gone through the cough medicine, and I've gone through the antibiotics, and I've gone through all this. And I could blame him and go, oh, God just doesn't love me. He's trying to destroy my life. And he's just trying to keep me down. And God, where are you? Da-da-da-da-da-da. No, this isn't God's fault. It's spring. And we got a lot of, if you came to our house last week, our neighbor has a cottonwood tree. Is that what it is? Oh, it's in our yard? Why have we cut it down? Anyway, I didn't know it was ours. Oh, there's many of them. Cottonwood trees. Anybody have a cottonwood tree in their yard? It looks like it's snowing right now. Our yard looks like it's snowed. And thankfully, I'm so thankful for the rain on Friday to kind of try to wash some of this stuff away. But there's this thing, we're living in a fallen world, and there's this thing called allergies and sinuses and stuff like that. Is God mad at me? No, he's not mad at me. Is he trying to punish me? No, he's not trying to punish me. It's what it is, So I don't get all upset with God and get all mad with him, saying, God, what are you doing this and that? No. How many ever heard of Elizabeth Elliot? Jim and Elizabeth Elliot? These incredible missionaries to the Indians in Ecuador years and years ago. I think she got her upgrade to heaven like in 2013, something like that. But her first husband, they're called to be missionaries on the mission field in Ecuador with the Indians. These are tribal Indians. They're cannibals, the whole bit. And there was the Tip of the Spear that came out, the movie several years ago, phenomenal movie about Elizabeth and Jim Elliot. Well, because they were trying to evangelize and bring salvation to the Indians, Jim and Nate Saint, I think there was like 3 or 4 guys, they were martyred for their faith. Martyred for their faith. And at that time, Elizabeth and Jim had a couple of children. One was a baby, I think a little girl. And so anyway, she takes her little girl after Jim has been martyred, and she goes back to the same Indians that martyred her husband to still bring the gospel to them, to love on them. Elizabeth winds up getting married, and her second husband dies of cancer, I believe it was. And I think she married again, and her third husband died of cancer. And someone asked Elizabeth one day, again, she died when she was in her 90s, probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And someone asked her one day, well, didn't you ever get upset with God because your first husband was martyred when he's on the mission field trying to bring the gospel to these people, and they wound up killing him? And then your second husband dies of cancer, and I think she was married a third time, and her third husband died of cancer. And she's like, are you kidding? How dare I ever get upset with God? How dare I ever question him? He's a good God. And sometimes our thinking gets really messed up here. And most of the time, because we do not understand him and we don't understand his word, that he is for us, he's not against us. The enemy's against you, not God. But there's other times too that we open up doors purposely. Well, sometimes not purposely, we're just thinking like blondes. And we open up doors that allows the enemy access into our lives, into our mind. But you know what? God's the one that gets blamed for it. And he's like, I didn't do this. I did not do this. You were the one that was unwise with your finances. I blessed you. I gave you money, and you went out and you did stuff with it you should not have done. That was not me. And so now you're reaping what you sowed. And, you know, sometimes I was thinking this morning, I'm sure all of you that have kids, you can appreciate this. But, you know, sometimes your kids come to you and go, oh, Mom, Dad, you're the most awesome person in all the world. You're so cool. Oh, man, you're amazing. You're just, whoa, you're so cool, and thank you for letting me do this or giving me this. Wow, I always wanted this. And there's a few days later, like, oh, you're just trying to destroy my life. You know, you just don't want me to have a life. And why are you doing this? And da-da-da-da-da-da. And they just flip-flop. One minute you're the most awesome mom or dad in the world, and the next minute you're trying to destroy their life. You don't want me to have a future. You're trying to control me. And that's what we do with God as a father. Oh, you're so amazing. We just worship you. You're incredible. Oh, my gosh. I got the best dad in all the world. And the next minute we're like, oh, God, what are you doing? You're just trying to destroy my life. You don't care about me. What are you just like, huh, are you punishing me, God? Mom, Dad, you're punishing me? No, we're not. You did this, and as a result of that, we have to bring discipline in your life so you don't go do it again. Because we love you that much, that we're going to bring some discipline in your life because we love you enough that you don't destroy yourself. And as parents, we don't think twice about that. You know, the old saying, this hurts you worse than it hurts you. I really believe that about God. I believe when Father brings discipline in our life, I really feel like it hurts him more than it hurts us. And you know how many people, 7.5 billion people on the planet, he has to be hurt over all the time? You only have maybe 1 or 2 kids, or like the Trits, 4 kids, or maybe like the Deeds, 8 kids and plus, or whatever, you know? Can you imagine the heartache they've gone through over the years? Well, this hurts me more than it hurts you. Yeah, Mom, sure. I'm the one that got spanking. So here's Elijah, and he's running from this woman. Do you understand what I'm saying? We can see God do miracles and all kind of stuff, and it's like, wow, that's amazing. And then all of a sudden, one person can upset our life. Our boss, our spouse, a friend or whatever, and then all of a sudden the whole world's caving in. And I can't for the life of me understand why he was running from this woman, except there was a spirit behind it. So, anyway, it says, then he came to a cave. After he leaves Beersheba, he goes to a cave. And some of you need to find your cave. You need to find your cave, and it may be in a recliner with a blanket over your head. It may be in your car. I don't know where your cave is, but you need to find your cave, because some of your breakthrough is not going to come until you get in your cave. About 3.5 years ago, the house we lived in Atlanta, it was 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. It was a huge house that we had. The Conumars lived with us, and Sonia lived with us, and then the Cubans would come live with us at times when they were in the country. And it was a big house. But in my bedroom alone, my closet was probably 12 by 12. Maybe you should say, something like that. And that wasn't mine and Ray's closet, that was my closet. And trust me, I couldn't fill it up with clothes by far. But that was my closet, but I called it my cave. And it was my cave. And I would go spend hours in there sometimes. And there was this one particular Saturday that I just needed to remind God of some things. There's a difference by reminding God, not that he's forgotten things, but sometimes he wants to make sure we haven't forgotten. And there's other times when we are blaming God for stuff. This was not a day I was blaming him for stuff. But we need to see some breakthrough in some areas. And I was just like, ooh. So I went up to my closet for like 6 hours, in my cave. And I was like, God, listen, I've done this. We've been faithful at tithes and offerings. I've been faithful to do everything you've told me to do. And man, I was just, and I was like, whoa, yeah, whoa. And at one point, somebody asked Ray, he was downstairs, and they're like, is Mom okay up there? Because you could hear it throughout the whole house. I mean, I just was like, but I went in my cave and I did. I didn't get on Facebook and do it. I didn't call my best friend and do it. I didn't call, my mom's not, she said she got her upper grade by that time. I didn't call Daddy Leif and, Daddy Leif, no, I went into my cave. And I'm like, Father, we've been faithful. We've done everything you've asked us to do. And seriously, I stayed there till I got a breakthrough. But the church is lazy. If we don't see it instantly, like driving through Wendy's or McDonald's or something like that, if it was in our way and everything packed and everything, well, they forgot to put the salad dressing with the salad. Those people. No, we got to have it our way or no way. And God's saying, you're not going to have it your way. It's going to be my way or no way. Amen. And so here's Elijah. He goes into a cave to seek God. And what happens? He's waiting for the storm to come through, or the lightning or whatever. How does God show up? He just shows up in a loving way. And that's what happened to me that day in that cave. And there's times when I have to get up early in the morning, and I have to go seek him. He says, seek me while I can be found. Go after me. And I get up and I go into my prayer room in our house, and I'm like, Father, I'm confused about this, or Father, I need a breakthrough in this area, or God, I just need a word. And I tell you what, when my dad speaks, it can be storms, and when he speaks, everything's okay. But some of us will not take the time to hear our Father's voice. We think it's going to be a drive-through thing, and all of a sudden, here's your little bag and your drink, go ahead. No, he's not going to do it that way. You know, when I was growing up, you went and sat in a restaurant and you ordered your meal, and you waited for your meal. But not today. We have to have everything. It's instantaneous, throw it in the microwave, and it's done. And I tell you what, that's not the way God works. He's not instantaneous like that. Yes, God can just provide like that at times. I understand that. But for the most part in our Christian walk, you got to go after it. And the church is lazy. We don't go after it. He says, seek me while I can be found. Go after me. Be diligent about it, and we have to do it. So Elijah went into the cave. Find your cave. You've got to find. Well, I don't know what your cave's going to look like, but find your cave, because that's where your breakthrough is going to come. And so anyway, it comes out, and we're going to fast forward, and here's Ahab, and he's in the palace, and there's a really cool garden next to his palace. And I think the guy's name is Naboth. Is that his name, Naboth? And so there's this really cool, Naboth. It's a vineyard. It's not just a garden, it's a vineyard. Wow, wine. Woo-hoo. And I drank a lot of wine back there. And so there's this really cool vineyard, and Ahab, the king, he goes and sees this vineyard of Naboth, and he's like, wow, I want that vineyard. That's a really cool vineyard. So he goes to Naboth and says, hey, I want your vineyard. I'd give you land. I'll do this and everything else. He goes, no, I can't do that. You don't understand. This is from my family line. This is the inheritance. This isn't just some piece of property that I bought a couple of years ago. This was in my inheritance. And you've got an inheritance from the kingdom of God, and you better be careful how you steward it. You don't let anybody come and take your inheritance. And so Naboth says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. So this king, this is so insane. So this king goes back in chapter 21. Now it came about after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard, and it goes through, and it comes on down, verse 4. So Ahab came into his house sullen and vexed. Oh my gosh, I can't have the vineyard. Oh my goodness. Because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. You better steward your inheritance. You better take care of the inheritance God's given you. And he lay down in his bed and turned away his face and ate no food. Over a vineyard. It's not a city. It's just a vineyard. And this guy is in depression because he can't get this other guy's vineyard. Man, jealousy and covetousness, it'll drive you in the ground fast. You better guard your heart and guard your mind. You know, listen, it's such crazy things the way we think. You know, we can be here on a Sunday morning, and maybe a gal is leaving right before service or right after, and she's going to the restroom, and this is what one of us women can think. Well, I said hi to her, and she didn't say hi to me. She must be mad at me. It must be because of what I put on Facebook the other day. She must be mad at me. She doesn't like me. Oh, my gosh. You know what? It could be she's pregnant. She's about to puke her guts out, and she's just trying to get to the restroom. You know what? I sent them a private message on Facebook the other day. They didn't answer me. Well, you know what? I'm not talking to them anymore. This is crazy stuff that we do as Christians. It's insane stuff. It's stinking stuff. And then we wonder why people don't want what we got. And your job. When you're sitting there, you're gossiping about or tearing your boss down, and then you're going to, you know what, will you come to church on July 16th? We're having an amazing dinner on the ground, and Jesus loves you, and this and that. And they're remembering last week when you were tearing the boss down. And they're like, why do I want what you got? You're double-mouthed. I know I sounds like I'm preaching at you, and I am. Anyway, so I just want you to be free in your thinking. Listen, I don't just have a pure mind all the time. I'm just not free in my mind. I have to steward my mind, my thoughts. I have to choose what I'm going to think today. It just doesn't come natural for me because I'm a pastor. I have to manage my thoughts. They come at me just like the pigeon sits on my shoulder and tells me stuff too. But you know what? I more and more make the choice to boom, flick that pigeon off and say, I ain't listening to you. Because all you're out is to rob, steal, kill, and destroy my life. And I'm not going to listen to you. So here's Ahab, and he's all depressed because he can't have this vineyard of somebody else. It says in verse 5, but Jezebel, his wife, came to him and said to him, how is it that your spirit is so sullen that you're not eating food, my sweetheart? I'm so sorry. So he said to her, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite. That's a king. And he said to him, give me your vineyard for money, or else, if it pleases you, I will give you a vineyard in its place. But he said, I will not give you my vineyard. And Jezebel, his wife, said to him, oh, do you not now reign over Israel? Eat, arise, eat bread, and let your heart be joyful, my dear. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. That's sick. Now, elders, listen to this next one. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with this seal and sent letters to the elders and to the nobles of the city. The enemy will come after you no matter what. He's going to come after you. And it may look like this, it may look like that. He doesn't have an exhaustive list, and he gets to the end of it and goes, oh, well, I don't have any other way to do it. He will find every single way to tear you down, and most of it starts here. You need to put on your helmet of salvation. When you guys go and play baseball this afternoon, do you guys have those helmets you wear? I hope every person that puts that helmet on this afternoon, you're thinking about this helmet of salvation. We don't need to just protect this natural skull that's here and that brain that's in there. Listen, if you don't have a brain, if your brain gets damaged, it's over. Yeah, you can stay in a coma or whatever and brain dead and your heart's beating, but you don't function in life anymore. And it's the same thing spiritually. If we don't take control of our thought life by the Spirit of God and the Word of God, we are going to be destroyed. So she writes a letter to the elders, and basically Jezebel goes after her stuff, and she's going to try to do it. But in the end, Ahab gets it and Jezebel gets it. God wants you to live free, not only in your heart, but in your mind. And most of us, again, we'd say, oh, yes, I'm saved. My heart, Jesus is on the throne of my heart. See? But in our minds, he's not. We've either got ourselves or the enemy, or we've got another person. Sometimes it's another person on the throne, because we hear this voice playing over and over and over in our head. Well, see, you're nothing. You're stupid. Nobody would ever hire you. You know, nobody would ever love you. Nobody would ever believe in you. That is from the pit of hell. That is not your Father speaking that way. And you have to learn to listen to the voice of the dove. I've had to learn to do that. And I get things hit at me all the time. Constantly, there's things that are hitting against me all the time. I could be depressed every day if I allow myself to do it. I could be discouraged, disappointed, and depressed every single day. And you wouldn't want me here. We've got to stop the stinking thinking. We've got to put on the helmet of salvation and think God's thought. Again, I cannot have, whether it's a thought of bitterness, whether it's a thought of impurity, whatever it is, I can't afford to have those thoughts in here. This thing God gave us up here is very, very precious. Use it right. Don't just use it for education to be smart. Use it for the kingdom of God, that you can live free and that you're not bombarded with these thoughts all the time. I really wonder, I'm like, how do people think these thoughts? Where did you come to that conclusion that she's mad at you? Just because listen, how many of you send out a text and they don't answer you back? And you think, oh my gosh, why didn't they answer me back? They must be mad at me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you don't go that, but my thoughts sometimes like, what's going on here? They didn't answer me back. And then That happens to me. I'm thinking, oh, I text this person, they didn't answer me back. And then I go like 2 hours later and I get another text. I'm looking through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, they did answer me back. And I've already thought, oh, they must be mad at me. They must be upset or whatever. But no, they did answer me back. Yep, I'll be there. It's vain imaginations. And we have them all the time. And honestly, this is just what I'm trying to tell you. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. And stop blaming God. I'm so tired of people blaming God. I really am. He's a good father. He is a just father. But he's a good father. And he wants the best for you. But the enemy tells you, nope, he gave you this sickness. You know, he did this to you. That is not true. It is not true. A lot of us, again, we've opened our own stuff up. Some of you saw this past week, I made a post. I'm going to close with this, and we're going to pray. I made a post this past week on June 22nd, just this last week. I don't know how many of you saw my post about the day my body crashed. It's in the stories in this book. There's a whole chapter on the day my body crashed. June 22nd, 2010, my body crashed from severe adrenal fatigue. I almost died. And I was really sick. And again, as I acknowledged in my post this week, if it wasn't for my husband and for Daddy Leif and Joelle and Soraya and my intercessor Catherine, I don't know what I would have done. I couldn't even go into the kitchen and make a sandwich. I would just freak out. What happened, I didn't know where the adrenal glands were at that time. I didn't know what their function was. I didn't know anything about adrenal glands, but I had to learn really quick. And so just like a heart has a, beat, or whatever they do, and a heart, you see, will just flatline because it stops beating. That's basically what happened with my adrenal glands. Why do they call it adrenal glands? Because it's what gives you energy. It's called adrenaline, okay? And the adrenal glands produce cortisol, okay? How many of you have taken cortisol or cortisone or whatever, steroids to, kickstart something or help you? And so my adrenal glands were not producing cortisol. That actually is what your adrenal glands make. And so my adrenal glands basically flatlined. There was nothing. It was like I was trying to go up a hill and my foot was to the metal, but there was nothing coming out. I couldn't get up. And so I went through a period of several months, and I had to just really work on my body, and really I was doing really good before that as far as physically, and all of a sudden my body just went downhill. And so during that season of my life, I asked, God spoke to me very clearly. He said, you have one body this side of heaven, and you better learn to take care of it. That was June 22nd, 2010, 7 years ago. You better learn to take care of it. And I wasn't stewarding my body very well. Now, am I perfection at it now? No, I'm not. But I've learned more and more how if we can be in Cuba, and I just feel like I need a break. I'll say, Sonia, take the team here or there, whatever, I'm staying back. And I don't have a problem saying that. So I could not blame God. Well, God, you did this to me. Why are you doing this to me? Da-da. No, it wasn't him. He gave me this body to steward. He gave you your body to steward. He gave you your finances to steward. He gave you your children to steward. And you need to manage those and steward those under the kingdom. And so I had to make some conscious decisions. It didn't just happen overnight. I just know, oh, well, I'll just kind of, it'll just kind of. No, I had to make some conscious decisions to change my lifestyle. One of the things I had to do, I stopped drinking Coke. And during that season of my life, I'd be in a line at the checkout counter, and there'd be someone buying 2 or 3 2 liters of Coke, and literally I'd get nauseous over it. It just did not appeal to me at all. So it's very, very, I can go probably a year and maybe have 1 or 2 glasses of Coke. I can preach in Cuba. It's hot. We just finished the service, and that's all they got that's cold is like a little glass of Coke. I'm like, okay, yeah, I just need something to refresh my throat. But I don't drink this stuff. If you find it in our house, it's because somebody's brought it over there. We do not buy it. And there's other things I just had to readjust in my life. When my stepfather died of cancer, we didn't blame God. He smoked for years and years and years, and the cancer had gone up to his 4th trach, the ring. He was diagnosed the day after Thanksgiving, and December 9th he died. And was that God's fault? No. It wasn't God's fault. He didn't take care of his body. He smoked and smoked and smoked, and God didn't create this body to have this stick in our mouth. God didn't create our bodies to eat some of the stuff that we eat. There is so much preservatives and stuff. There's so much plastics. There's so much, and I'm not here to preach a message on health. But there's so much stuff that we put in our bodies that God did not create our bodies to handle it. And then we wonder why we have all the sicknesses and the disease and all this kind of stuff that happens. And so the main point is we got to be wiser in what we're doing. We really have to think kingdom. And we got to think, is this the best thing? Is this thought the best thing for me? And I really like to challenge you. Take one day this week. Take a half a day. Don't do it. Do it from 6 o'clock to noon. And write every thought down. And then examine it at the end and go, and I guarantee you most of us go, whoo, do I need to change the way I think? It could be at a stoplight and somebody just kind of like blows you off or whatever. And it goes back to that negative thinking. And I personally, and I've said this before, I don't like to hang around negative people. I just don't. Because it's contagious. Now, that doesn't mean I don't counsel with people that are going through things and having situations and love on them and give them hugs and everything, but I don't spend my time hanging out with negative people. We had a couple at our house last night for dinner. The guy's laughing. He's smiling all the time. He just smiles all the time. And I'm like, oh, I like that. I like this guy's always smiling. And it's not fake. He really means it. He's just happy. And I'm like, I like hanging out with you. Because it causes me to feel happy. And so we really need to think about, we just let stuff come in there, and all of a sudden we build a case up against a person, and it's like, that isn't even what they were thinking. It is so far from what that person was thinking or doing, and you know what? You're not even on their mind. Listen, and I'll close with this. I got half a minute. My dad in my life, and some of you allow this to happen in your life, you allow other people's actions and attitudes to dictate your life. And my biological father, I didn't know him. I didn't have a picture of him. He lived an hour and a half from me. I didn't know the man. But his actions and attitudes controlled my life up until I was 28 years old. He's gone on with his life. I'll take, yes, 28 years old. He's gone on with his life, and he's doing his life and everything, and we're not even communicating, but he's controlling my life. I got unforgiveness towards him, and anger, and bitterness, and resentment, and listen, it's real that there's things that happen to people today that are so wrong. It's just so wrong. But we allow other people through different situations and circumstances to control our lives. More than we allow God to. Because we have resentment, unforgiveness, bitterness. And so what they're doing, and I did this illustration about 2 years ago when I preached, maybe 2.5 years ago when I preached on unforgiveness. And I don't know how many of you were here, but what I used to do, I used to teach Going Through Forgiveness at Teen Challenge. And all the students went through that class. Every 3 months I taught it. So they had to go through that class twice because people hold so much unforgiveness towards people. And unforgiveness is like a cancer to the spiritual soul. It'll eat away at you and eat away at you and eat away at you. And it was doing it to me. And so I would teach that class, and towards the end of the week, and I did this about 2.5 years ago, I do an illustration where I tie a rope around my waist, and I have somebody else, and they tie the other end around their waist. I don't know how many remember this. And then I would get a garbage bag. I have the women, like, don't empty the garbage like in the kitchen at the Teen Challenge House for like 2 days. I really want it stinky. I want garbage. And I would put that garbage bag over my shoulder. And when I do the illustration, the person that had the other end of the rope represented my father. And then, of course, I was at this end of the rope. And that person would just start walking like they're just going through life, and they're dragging me along. And I've got the garbage bag, and I'm bumping into people and knocking them and everything as I'm going through life. This stinky, stinky garbage bag. That garbage bag represents unforgiveness, bitterness, anger towards other people, towards God, towards yourself. Do you know forgiving yourself is one of the hardest things to do? It's harder to forgive yourself in a lot of circumstances than it is to forgive somebody else. And we don't need to forgive God, but it's feelings that we hold towards God that we need to deal with. And so I would go around and I'd be hitting people, and this person's dragging me, literally dragging me all over the place. And that's what happened in my life for 28 years until one night, September 1984, I made the choice to forgive my biological father for rejecting me, for never wanting to have anything to do with me, never being there, never sending a Christmas card, a Christmas present, a birthday card, never a call, nothing. And I had to choose with my mind, choose you this day. I had to choose with my mind, Father, I choose to forgive my biological father for not being there, for not wanting me, not coming to the hospital when I was born, for rejecting me, for never calling me, for never sending me a birthday present, a birthday card. He lived an hour and a half from me. I'd see my grandparents. I would never see my dad. And I had to deal with that stuff in my heart. And the night, September 1984, when I willingly, I didn't feel like it. I didn't want to do this. I'm like, I hate to go. But I had to make a choice. It had to start with my heart and then with my mind to say, I choose to forgive him. And as soon as I did, it was like a ton of bricks came off of me that I carried for 28 years. And when I did that, I dropped the bag of garbage and I loosened the rope and I was free. But for years, 28 years, I allowed a man I never met, I'd never seen a picture of, control and dictate my life. And there's some of you in here this morning, you've allowed somebody else to control and dictate your life. It could be your boss, it could be your spouse, it could be a parent, and they're controlling you more than the Spirit of God is controlling you. And that needs to stop so that you can be free, that you can be everything that God has created you to be. And you need to stop the warring that's going on in your mind and put on the helmet of salvation to protect that mind, guys, to protect your mind. And so I'd encourage you every morning to get up, and maybe you say, I'm just going to, it's a prophetic act. This is my helmet of salvation right here on my dresser. It can be on the dashboard of your car. It could be in your bath. I don't know. You find where your helmet is. And every morning, until it becomes a habit, take that helmet and go, I am putting on today the helmet of salvation that is going to protect and guard my mind against the arrows and the assignments the enemy wants to come against my life and destroy it.